Well, anyway. Voilà, that's all. Bismillah. Okay, let me see my friends here. Hello, good evening, everyone. I hope you're doing well, and I'm very glad to renew this meeting or this series of meetings with you, ladies and gentlemen. After a break, this has to do with the holidays on the one hand, and also with with a health condition. I caught cold, as you may have noticed that before, and that took me, a whole week before I started to recover, little by little. Thank you very much for the different. The so many messages that I received from you asking about what happens to these live sessions. Thank you very much for your generosity and also for the interest that you continue to show in this channel. Thank you very much. I hope I will be of some help to the students who asked me to hold the live session. Of course, the groups of students from 2 different universities have specifically asked me to hold a live session where I can discuss research methodology and the ESP, the End of Studies project. I will try to lump the 2 requests, into one single session. Let me read your comments and react to them. And of course, we can proceed by means of question answer rather than direct lecturing like this. But of course, I will have a background beforehand. Si Mustafa Morshid, hello, and thank you very much for being always the first, you and Nathalie Leblanc, to attend the live session. Your messages are the first. So hello, good evening. Si Mohamed Bouissan, I hope you are doing well. ماني كتجيت لاباس دارك ماكيين من زكين استمير تغين هنا اللي تغين استمير كازان ودوه. You can tell me because you you talk to me in تشبيت and I have responded to that. Okay, Kautar Ominetlet. Okay, good evening. Khadija, good evening as well. See Hisham Darfouf, good evening. So glad to see you too, Mr. Hisham, to see that you have joined us here too. Usada Samia Mustafir, hello. I hope you are doing well. Usada Faiza Ashfi'a, hello. I'm doing well, thank you very much. See Mohammed Tawshik, hello. Zuhair Izahwani, good evening. Glad to see you as well. Thank you. Thank you, Nathalie. Thank you very much. Alan Bila Hudud, thank you so much. Mr. Ayub Regragi, hello, and thank you for joining us here. The financer, cultural studies, you are welcome, whoever you are. You don't need to be a specialist to join, here, because we cover. Of course, I cannot offer probably much in cultural studies by virtue of not being a specialist, and I don't want to step on or to encroach upon the territory of my colleagues, and because I will do it the bad way if I try to answer questions that relate to cultural studies. But in any case, there is always a room for learning. There is, it's just the fact of exchanging, will result in a learning experience. See, Al-Abduni Ali. Okay, so we have the finance and cultural studies. See Ayub Regragui for these inspiring sessions. He thanks me for the sessions. Thank you very much. It's generous of you to write that about these sessions. Thank you very much. See Abduni Ali, thank you. My dear friend, and I hope you're doing well, and I hope these sessions will be of some help to our friends. Mr. Jarrai, hello, nice jacket. Thank you so much. Thank you. It's very spontaneous. I do not plan what to wear generally. So Sami Delhaj, good evening, dear professor. Thank you for the insightful session. Thank you very much. Si Sami. And Mohammed Bouknifi, hello, dear Si Mohammed. Thank you so much. I would like to seize the opportunity to express my sincere condolences to our colleague, Professor Khadija Anas, who lost her husband a couple of days ago. To Allah we belong, and to him we shall return. Thank you so much. Anyway, if there is no specific question, if there is no ad hoc question that you would like us to address, we can move directly to the discussion of the ESP, the End of Studies project, as well as elements from research methodology. Needless to say that whatever we say about research methodology, the field remains so vast that we cannot capture everything in a single session, for the simple reason that there are a lot of issues that we can discuss. And there are, of course, ramifications depending on the type of research one is conducting. But I gathered from the students who requested a session on research methodology that they have this as a course. And I'm very glad, by the way, to be assigned this course in S4 this semester. Really looking forward to sharing what I can share with my students, and I hope it will be both fruitful and enjoyable for both of us. All right, so I will do my best to cover bits and pieces, unless if and this is a call for those students, if they are with us here. If you think that I have missed a point, or there is something you would like me to elaborate on, expound, I will be very happy to have a question from you, and then I will react to that in the form of a comment and an explanation, of course, by means of illustrative example, as is my habit. See Mustafa, rahimahullah, waskanu fi jannati. Ustad Saraji, good evening. I hope you're doing well, dear colleague. I hope you're doing well. Thanks a trillion for tonight's session. Thank you very much, Ustad Arim, and I'm very happy that you continue to join us together with our dear friends here. Thank you for your motivating, words. Ustad Hassan Fitri, Imam Diana, who is also doing English. This is really amazing. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Silfqi, fin وصلت السلكة اليوم? Tell us in the comment. I don't know whether you you follow the anyway, because there is this in the regions of Marrakesh. I think it's different from northern cities. But anyway, if you could enlighten us on that. I guess it's the first days of Sha'ban, I guess. So it should be one of the 10th or the 12th. So let us know, please. I hope you're doing well. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us. Zuhair Zahwani, hi sir. Do you or anyone here have any idea about self-paced reading as a research instrument? Any pieces of advice, recommendations, best practices on how to conduct an experiment? This will depend, my friend Zuhair. I don't know if there's a colleague here, a friend here who has ever worked on this directly in his or her research or in an article. Then please inform Mr. Zuhair Zahwani on this. But my reaction to this is that this will heavily depend on your research questions, your hypotheses. If you could share with us how, that will give us, room for probably suggesting ways you can cope with this problem. Mr. Bilal, hello, professor. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're doing well. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're doing well. Nice to meet you after this long absence. Mr. Aznud was a master's student. Not only was he a good student, but he is accomplished at a number of things. Very good English, very good research skills, very polite, and this is necessary, among students. You see, you have ingredients of a very good young scholar. I wish you all the best. See as a nude. Okay, thank you very much, Ustad Arib Saraji. Thank you. No. So, Mr. Zuhair, if there is anyone who would like to let Mr. Zuhair know about this method, if you have used it, you could share with him. Even if you have articles or anything written on this method, would you kindly share with him with Zuhair as a research instrument? So now what happens, let me answer you by means of a general statement. For any method for data collection, one has to mimic somehow what the others did. Of course, especially if you have done readings, of articles of stuff that was written by people who are renowned in the field, then of course you will try to do what they did, try to replicate their experiment, and not replicate, but it's not replicate something else, but try to do it the way they did it. That will help you a lot because the instrument is validated, and anyway, you are borrowing from an authority in the field. All that you need to do here is to try to make it clear in your methodology that, of course, the idea is borrowed from so and so. There is no harm in that. All right. Nice. Well, dear friends, let's just jump headlong into the stuff, into the point to be discussed, today, which has to do with research methodology and, of course, ESP. I will try to deal with them, in an intertwined fashion because they are inextricable. Because we study research only because we want to make our research project successful. Starting, of course, with the research project referred to as ESP, and it's a pity that the ESP may not continue, in the next years. And I hope in this regard that our colleagues will try to substitute it somehow in individual courses by means of, or by a research papers or individual, projects that will help to a large extent, introduce the student to research, to the domain research, and help them have a hands-on experience, when it comes to conducting an academic piece of research. All right. Hello, sir. Khadija says, thank you very much. I'm doing well. Thank you. I have a question related to the theoretical framework in quantitative design, if you have any advice. My topic is related to knowledge action gap in environment sustainability among students. Thank you. Now, there is hardly any difference between a theoretical framework, where the researcher or for a study that is quantitative and that which is qualitative. There are certain guidelines for writing a review of literature. What is a review of the literature? Or because some people confuse theoretical framework, review of literature, a conceptual framework, and so forth. Now, let me just refer to that chapter, to that background chapter, commonly referred to as the review chapter or the review of literature chapter. There are some researchers, depending on the level, whether you are at the level of doctorate, at the level of the master's, or an ESP, there are people who choose to divide that chapter into a review of literature, conceptual framework, theoretical framework, review of literature. Now, some people might think that it's better to divide it into 3 chapters. Personally, I think that's too much. There are people who would talk about chapter 1 as being theoretical framework, or as being concerned with theoretical framework, and the remainder, the second part or the second chapter, concerned with the review of literature. What's the difference between the two? Rather, what's the difference between the 3? Conceptual framework, theoretical framework, review of literature. Now, initially, because the term review of literature can be thought of as a generic term, because when you do conceptual framework, you are reviewing what people said before. When you are doing theoretical framework, you are necessarily, reviewing what has been said before. And in the review, by definition, you are reviewing what people have said before. Therefore, according to some researchers, we can call it, you can use the umbrella term review of literature, in which you will include all of these things. For other people, the people who think that it's better to isolate what is a review and what is a theoretical framework and a conceptual framework, they reserve usually they start with conceptual framework. Conceptual framework simply refers to the key concepts in the study and their definitions as rendered in different studies. Let me give you an example, a spontaneous example. Of course, it's when you're talking about the notion of second language, the concept of a second language. Different people have characterized second language, have given different characterizations for the term second language. Therefore, it's there where you need to define the concept to report on, or to critically maybe review what people have said about the concept and probably to introduce your own point of view in there. All right. Different concepts, the term acquisition, term learning, the term maybe teaching, critical thinking, whatever. In any case, you review a concept, you define it, and you you summarize what people have said before. Now, this is the conceptual framework. Now, the theoretical framework is something different. What makes it different is the fact that any issue that we have in the field of linguistics, in human sciences in general, in sciences in general, different, practically all issues, of course, have been dealt with from different theoretical perspectives, from different theoretical angles of vision. In a review of literature, what we do is just bring together these different theoretical standpoints and maybe draw a conclusion and make a case for one of them, for example. Highlight, for example, the respects in which theoretical framework X supersedes its predecessors, or theoretical framework, X supersedes the one that came after it. It's just like that. A case in point, a good example comes from. Let me give you the example from syntax or phonology or morphology. These, let's take morphophonology. Now, if you have an issue, if you have a morphophonological issue to investigate, and then of course you have to talk about that issue, to define it, to delimit it, of course, and to make mention of the different people who worked on it before, and you can classify these people depending on their theoretical affiliations. Okay, because whether we like it or not, we are theory faithful, or faithful to a given theory in the analysis. So we have to define the theoretical perspective from which we will be looking at our data, and from which we will start to analyze the data. So in a review, in the theoretical framework part, what we generally do is maybe talk about the theoretical maybe standpoints, of course, but we define also the theory, and we talk about its strengths and also its limitations, and maybe we can talk about theoretical framework that came after, and so on and so forth, until we land on the theoretical framework we are about to use, or we intend to use as a frame of reference in our study. So this is what the theoretical framework is about. Okay, it's about the review of the different theoretical models that have been used to talk about, or to discuss, to analyze issue X or issue Y. Now, for the review of literature, it's something different. Review of literature, your focus is not on theory. Your focus is not on concepts. Your focus is on your objectives and the different, of course, the idea of your objective. Now, let me just say something about. Let me give you an example. Let's say the acquisition of diphthongs in Moroccan Arabic, or in English, the acquisition of diphthongs among Moroccan EFL learners. Let me give you an example of a theoretical So let's just take this to illustrate the three parts. the acquisition of diphthongization or diphthongs among of English diphthongs by Moroccan EFL learners. In the conceptual framework, I have to define what a diphthong is, and I have to define what acquisition is, and I have to talk about what has been said before. Now, in a theoretical framework, I need to expose to the reader the different approaches that were used, that were undertaken by previous studies in order to deal with this issue, how different theories look at the issue and how they analyzed it, and probably what findings there were. Review of literature is different. In the review of literature, I will have to talk about, to review all the important, okay, I can be selective if you wish. If there is an abundant, if there is a plethora of research before, I can be selective. Otherwise, you can mention, of course, the studies that you have at hand, and you review them regardless of their theoretical standpoint. And of course, this is an opportunity for you to make mention of the fact that so and so dealt with the acquisition of diphthongs among Moroccan EFL learners, but so and so did this from this theoretical perspective. Therefore, this had these limitations. So in the review of literature, you take, your object of study and you talk about what has been said before. I hope that the things are clear here. And of course, this is done regardless of whether your approach is quantitative or qualitative. Okay, thank you. Yes, I hope I have satisfied your curiosity. Mr. Bilal FTS, Mustafa, in theoretical framework, you introduce the theory that you will be using. Yes, that's true. By a leading figure in the field, in the literature review, you focus on the studies. That's true. So I think you summed it up all, Si Mustafa. Nuhaila El Haysan, hi dear professor, I hope you're doing well. I have a question. Can questionnaire be analyzed qualitatively? Yeah, this is a question that is often asked. Look, ladies and gentlemen, and specifically Nuhaila who asked this question. Now, this issue as to whether a questionnaire can be analyzed both qualitatively and quantitatively, this will heavily depend on how you articulate your hypotheses. It so happens that sometimes we have a research question that is conducive to a quantitative analysis, just as we may have research questions, therefore hypotheses that can be conducive to a quantitative analysis. Now, if you have one instrument like a questionnaire, for example, where, for example, you have data that you can, analyze by means of analyzing the scores that you have assigned to each answer. Here, what you are doing is a quantitative, analysis of those, questions. In a questionnaire, as you may well know, we may have a number of variables represented there. Of course, some variables can be qualitative, other variables can be quantitative. For example, so many people who analyze attitudes, for example, will have questions 1 to 10, about, questions 1 to 10 in the form of a Likert scale. And therefore, the analysis here is purely numeric. So we analyze that by means of numbers, in which case we can talk about a quantitative analysis of these items. However, towards maybe question 11 and 12, the researcher wants or would like to have or intend, maybe, asks questions such that he or she will get further data, because the assumption here is that sometimes numerical data are very dry. They just tell you yes, no, or they can give you a number, but it does not guarantee an in-depth analysis of things. So the researcher sometimes resorts, and this is very normal in questionnaire, resorts to maybe questions that are open-ended, where the analysis will not be in terms of numbers, but rather in terms of the language that the questionnaire, that the respondent has taken. Okay, so that has produced. And so we can say here that that our questionnaire has been analyzed both qualitatively and quantitatively, and there is no harm in that. Some people might choose to have a questionnaire where you have pure quantification, quantitative items or items that can be analyzed quantitatively. And instead of asking those open-ended questions, they prefer another instrument in the name of triangulation, perhaps, so that they conduct an interview. And that's also healthy, you see. So there is no harm, Nuhaila, there is no harm. If you a questionnaire is typically used for quantitative data analysis, despite the fact that you may have qualitative questions that you will analyze, of course, qualitatively. I find it somehow, I'm not saying that it's not a good thing, but I find it weird for all the questionnaire items to be analyzed qualitatively, for the simple reason that all that you need to do is abandon or dispense with the questionnaire in favor of the interview. So if you are going to analyze the questionnaire item, exclusively qualitatively, then it's better to call it an interview. That's all. Okay. So bottom line, Nohaila, I think, the one was Nohaila. Bottom line is, yes, you can have a questionnaire where you have you have items that can be analyzed qualitatively and items that can be analyzed quantitatively. Okay, Saeed, it's been a while, Saeed Rafi. Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's been a while. I hope you're doing well. Thank you, Saeed. Natalie should also explain the gap. In the review of the literature, we have to explain the gap, and I just talked about the contents. And yes, in conducting this review of the literature, we can explain the gap by pointing, for example, to the shortcomings of the different questionnaires. Sorry, the lid has gone down. Okay, Ruqiyya Uhaddi. Hello, Professor. I hope you're doing well. Ruqiyya, where is she? Yes, I will work on translation in my research paper. Any advice, my professor? Well, look, I'm not a specialist in translation, and I have never worked on this. And of course, there are people who know a lot better than me in this regard. But the piece of advice that you asked, by the way, thank you very much. Look, talk to your supervisor as frequently as possible, Ruqiyya, and try before you embark on your work, on your thesis or whatever you're doing, try to sit down and know where you are going. That is to say, try to delimit your objectives, especially that the field of translation is very broad. You may have a lot of research questions, so it's good to take some time and to think of course, in concert with your supervisor, try to delimit, try to think up the roadmap that you will follow. For example, you should be able to say, I have this and this. How about this? No, that, no. You should be able to say that. Otherwise, if you just jump headlong into the translation of a text, you don't know. You don't know where you will end. And this is not research, by the way. So that's the piece of advice I will give you. Other than that, I probably leave it to a specialist like your supervisor, perhaps, to answer this question. But these are general pieces of advice that apply not only to students of translation, but for any other, beginning researcher. Nuhaila, I have open-ended questions. I'm analyzing errors of second language learners by giving them some tasks. That's not a questionnaire. Nuhaila, that's a task. It's not a questionnaire. So you are analyzing this. Maybe you can have controlled production, like when you tell them, complete the sentence, like a sentence completion task, like close passage, or free production, like when you ask them to write a paragraph about something that they love. I don't know. Okay, but we should not call it questionnaire, Nuhaila. This is certainly not a questionnaire at all. It's a research instrument. Maybe you are confusing research instrument and questionnaire. I really don't know your level here. I'm sorry. Is it an ESP, or is it a doctorate, or is it a master's thesis? But in any case, we just don't call it a questionnaire in this regard. We call them tasks, and we have different tasks for gathering our data. You can have a translation task. You can have a grammaticality judgment task where you write, sentences that contain errors, and you ask the student to correct the error, or you can have a closed passage where you have fill in the blanks. But you can also have free writing where you analyze the student's errors. But in a questionnaire, I find it somehow weird to use a questionnaire, because we are looking for students' mistakes to analyze. That's not the way to go, dear Nuhaila. All right. Okay. Hello, Sarah Kvan. Hello. I hope you are doing well. Mr. Mustafa says some doctoral researchers do not provide an account of the statistical considerations taken into account in their research before data collection. They also do not provide an overview of statistical techniques. That's Mustafa, this will depend on the level you're talking about. For doctoral theses, where you have enough room to discuss those things, yes, that's highly desirable. Yes, but even if we are talking about lower levels, there should be some room, yes, to address these things. If only to mention, okay, the way you analyze. Sometimes you don't need even to justify, I have used so and so, and then you will leave. If you have enough room, like in the doctoral thesis, you can say why, you can justify in preparation for questions from the jury, of course, about why you have gone this way or that way. Thank you. I have a question regarding, Mr. Said says, regarding the literature review, professor, what are we supposed to use when we want to criticize, comment on a paper of a particular authors? Do we use we or the passive voice? I would, you have other techniques. We may not be favored, despite the fact that, for example, there are people who would say, we believe that, etc. Nice. But you have other techniques, like it seems that on the face of it, apparently, one can easily conclude that, you see, here these are techniques to say, to show what is important here is what? It's to show that you are not bringing the information, summarizing it, and stacking it in the form of paragraphs. It shows that there is something that springs from you. It shows that the review of literature is actively, is done in an active way. You are an active writer of the review of literature. There are people who make this cardinal sin, I would call it, cardinal sin, big mistake, let's say, of, thinking, or by thinking that a review of literature simply consists in reading what was written before and summarizing it and putting it there in their own words. No, my friend, this is not enough. This is only 50% of the thing. The other 50% is to do that in a critical way. How can we do it in a critical way? Mr. Said has alluded to the fact that you can use some of the expressions to show that it's yours. And I would suggest that there are, like it seems that, it would seem that, apparently, these show what? These show that it's you who is talking. And you may proceed also by comparing this author with another author. You may also relate what that author X says to your own work, to your own thesis. For example, if you have different objectives, you say, while so and so addressed these two variables, in our thesis, we will address. That's one way of marketing, your chapter, making believe that you are, doing so in an act. You are reviewing your literature in an active fashion. Okay. Thank you, Said, for you. Yeah, for the passive voice, yes, but it is thought that no, it doesn't show that it's still you. If you say it is said that, it is believed that this, you are not criticizing. No. Use these expressions rather than I or you, and then I or we, and that's fine. So you have multitudes of expressions. As you read the literature, you will certainly, get hold of some of the expressions that you might want to jot down for future use. Please do that when you read the literature review. When you do your own readings, you keep a list of expressions. For example, expressions that we use in the review of literature, or to show that we are critical in our review of the literature. Okay, thank you. Since I'm not dealing with very okay, Said, it's okay. No, Hayla, I don't have time for the interview. It's just a mini project. So, Nohaila, were you the one who talked about, I guess, the questionnaire? So it's yeah, you can lump the thing together. You may have half of it qualitative and the other half quantitative, and that's it. You are saying you don't have time for the interview. An interview does not require a lot of people, while a questionnaire does. In a questionnaire, you probably, if it's just a project, you might need 25, 30 students, but in an interview, only 2 or 3 will suffice. You see, because you're looking for qualitative data rather than quantitative data. But if you have already embarked on a questionnaire, then you can just go for maybe 5 questions, 5 quantitative questions and 2 or 3 qualitative questions, and it will turn out to be fine. Good. Bilal, is it acceptable to have hypotheses in the qualitative research design, since we are not dealing with variables, but rather with perspectives and experiences of participants? Thank you. Thank you, Bilal, for this very important question. Now, what is a hypothesis first? A hypothesis is just an educated guess about a given phenomenon. But of course, there is a difference between articulating a hypothesis in a qualitative study and doing so in a quantitative study. In a quantitative study, this is not an option; it's a must. As long as you are taking a quantitative perspective to collecting and to analyze, to data collection and data analysis, then you have to define your hypotheses a priori, that is to say, ahead of time. Good. Why? It's because there is a procedure for data collection that is rigorous, that is, that satisfies certain requirements. And the analysis will be statistical and it will be numeric. When you do this analysis, what are you going to analyze? What is data analysis after all? What do we do in data analysis? So when we analyze data, we have variables. We compare variables. We show relationships between variables. These variables, lest they should confuse the reader, have to be defined ahead of time. So in a typical quantitative study, what you do is, okay, tell the world that you have variable X and variable Y, and try to think up how to collect data representing those variables in satisfaction of validity. And then you move on to thinking up how to analyze these, variables. The only place where variables are clearly articulated are the hypotheses. So the hypotheses in a quantitative study are necessarily ahead of time. They come before. You see, they necessarily come before at the level of the introductions, and they are taken up in the methodology chapter as a way of reminding the reader of your main objective and your main hypothesis, and then you analyze. Now, the story, of course, is different when it comes to qualitative data analysis. Of course, we have different types of qualitative data analysis, qualitative studies, of course. Sometimes, you have an issue, let's say, in cultural studies, let's say, where you have maybe to analyze a novel, maybe, or a film, or a poem, or whatever. Cultural studies / literature, sometimes these studies can be, one can feed into another, as you know. So just imagine you have a film and you want to provide a perspective, an analysis, of a given film from an angle of vision, whatever it is. The different, approaches to analyzing a literary production. You can do that on a film as well. So here, what do? Do you need a hypothesis? Do you have variables ahead of time? No, because you make it clear that you will take, a maybe feminist, let's say, perspective to the analysis of a given film. And then you proceed, of course, with the analysis. Do you need a hypothesis here? If there is one hypothesis, for example, the feminist approach will provide a clearer perspective on issues like blah, 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 so this and that, than the psychoanalytical approach, let's say. That can be a hypothesis, but the way you articulate a hypothesis in a qualitative study is different from articulating it at the level of the quantitative study. In a quantitative study, your hypothesis has to be clearly stated and clearly articulated. Clearly, I'm not saying that it should not be clearly articulated elsewhere, but it should be clearly articulated in the sense that it should be directly stated in the form of one sentence that takes the form of a guess. Like, for example, method X student, okay, lower level students will higher level students will outperform lower level students on this and this. Here you are making it clear in a sentence. That's H1, hypothesis 1. And then you move to hypothesis 2, hypothesis 3, and so on and so forth. In a quantitative study, no. In a qualitative study, no. What you do is articulate the hypothesis, probably in the form of a paragraph, and laying out the perspective, and maybe providing some sort of justification. And it's not really a requirement, because the hypothesis typically, in a qualitative study, typically the hypothesis emerges at the end. Like, for example, saying, it turns out that, okay, or the data, the analysis so far, not the data, it's the analysis provided in chapter 5 or 6 suggests that this perspective supersedes the other one by so and so. You can be there, and maybe future researchers might probably espouse this theoretical framework rather than the other. Okay, so bottom line here, while the hypothesis in a given study is a very important, element, it can have different configurations as we move from qualitative to quantitative from a quantitative to a qualitative perspective. Okay, quantitative data analysis, where you have statistics, necessitate that your hypotheses be articulated ahead of time and in a clear way, and each hypothesis probably shows the interaction or the relationship between 2, 3, or more variables. That's the idea. Okay, I hope I have I don't know who asked this question. Okay, let's see Rafia, je pense. That's Bilal FTS. I hope I have satisfied your curiosity. Idris, hi dear professor. Hello, Mr. Idris. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining. Is it better to use chronological literature review? Yes. Nathalie Leblanc it talks about, there are different ways for developing the literature review. One way of doing it is maybe to do it in terms of the themes. Here, it's not chronological. You try to, for example, address different issues that were tackled in relation to what you are investigating, and then each section will correspond to a theme, and inside this you can have you can even inside individual sections that are depending on the theme, you can have some chronology. Okay, another way of doing it is to take the whole thing, take it lump sum, the theme lump sum, and cast a historical glance at the thing, and try to review the literature following a historical perspective. But it's more practical to divide your review of literature in terms of themes, and each theme is represented in a number of studies. Natalie. Okay, Qiyas, Idris, okay, Leblanc, literature. Idris says, I got 16.5 in my PFO last year. This only shows, Mr. Idris, that you are very hardworking and that you are a very good young scholar. So I wish you all the best. I'm really happy to hear this. I wish you all the best in your next academic steps. Arqiya Wahdi says, do research steps vary from one supervisor to another, or are they the same? Thank you. This is interesting. There is a core, Arqiya, there is a core, structure that is the subject of agreement among all researchers. You see, but we have to be careful because I don't know what you are interested in. Is it qualitative, quantitative? But anyway, there is this stage where you need to define your objectives. Nobody, will opt out of this. Objectives are the very first thing that you have to do. You have to work on. So sit down for a little while, talk. Think up your objectives and proceed. Then, of course, if it's a quantitative analysis, then you have to have research questions and hypotheses. Research questions also for qualitative, but hypotheses have to be clearly defined if you are to take a quantitative study. Working on your instruments is necessary, of course, because methodology is the backbone of any piece of research. Okay, nice. With your supervisor, what you can discuss, and that's very important, by the way. This is why I always say to advise students to talk to their supervisors and to take their perspectives. You see, before you go to talk to someone else, to ask someone else's opinion, talk to your supervisor. He's there. He's more knowledgeable. The more knowledgeable other. Okay, the term goes, and you will get advice from him or from her, and you need to work on that accordingly. Yes, of course. Sometimes there can be a difference of perspective as we move from one teacher to another, one supervisor to another. Why? You know why? Because if two teachers have two different ways of articulating hypotheses, then this difference in the articulation of objectives and therefore, because everything is interconnected. So if you articulate means you express your objectives and your hypotheses and your research questions differently as we move from one professor to another, then make sure that the remainder of the research will continue to be different. This has what we call a snowball effect on that, yeah, for sure. But just imagine we have two professors who agree on the same research questions, the same objectives, the same hypotheses. It's highly unlikely for any difference to arise later on. So if the differences that we see are differences actually of objectives and of hypothesis specific, and by the same token, the research questions. Okay, nice. Samir Aqdeem, how to choose a researchable topic that has enough resources. This is very interesting, Mr. Samir. Yeah, when we decide to select a topic. By the way, I have received a lot of. When I say a lot of, I mean it. It's a lot of requests asking me to suggest a topic. There are students I've never seen. I don't know whether they are in literature or in applied. Hello, sir, professor. I hope you're doing well. Could you possibly suggest a topic for me? This idea of suggesting topic is not a good idea at all. Never ever ask someone to choose a topic for you. Why? Because if you ask someone to choose a topic for you, it will always be a burden on you. When you just imagine I choose a topic for you, and midway you decide that it's too difficult to probably handle, you will give up on it, and then you will ask someone else to choose a topic. Now, topics that are suggested are unlikely to be successfully conducted or to worked on. So the advice to these young students here is, instead of asking someone to choose a topic for you, get an idea that springs from you yourself. Of course, when the idea comes, you may not be able to formulate objectives. Yes, you can seek advice, but the first idea should come from you. Even if the idea is a bad idea or not practical at all, just say, can I work on this? And you will hear yes or no, and then you can handle the thing in a very smooth way, in a very nice way, in a very in a more rapid, way. Fine. So this is not a good thing. Now, how to choose a topic that is researchable? Yes, of course, we always need to do this preliminary research ahead of time. Just imagine I have an idea that comes to mind. Okay. The idea that comes to mind is, for example, maybe the celebration of the Amazigh year, the new year. People are for, some are against, some, we are different by nature, and we might be interested into analyzing attitudes. Yes, you as someone who has never been introduced to research, you can suggest this. I would like to talk about the people's views on the celebration of the Amazigh year. See, and here the professor can help you, not the professor necessarily, but someone can help you, for example, to say, well, that's a good topic. Deja, when he says that's a good topic, that's encouraging. And the question comes from you, how can I proceed? Then here, yes, you can rightly ask this question, and you will be discussing this and over. Research has building blocks. It doesn't come like that. Just imagine I come and suggest to you a piece of research that I am interested in. Well, I may find it interesting, but not necessarily you. So, my dear friends, always try to choose. So, number one, the choice should come from you, from the student. The choice should come from the student himself or herself. When you have a topic that is imposed on you or given to you, it will never be successful, and it will be short-lived, because once you are done with that, that's it. You may not. Successful topics, by the way, are the ones and I know a lot of students, a lot of people who started with a topic at the level of the BA. They developed it, broadened it, in other words, at the master's level, and they broadened it. They gave it even an even broader perspective of the doctorate, and this is how we become a specialist, my friend. Now, if I suggest a topic for you now, and you finish with it, and you may have your grade, and you go, what if when you are the master, you will look for someone else to suggest a topic for you, and that teaches somehow laziness. And I'm sorry to say this. So a successful topic has to spring from you, from your interest, something you will enjoy. In any case, you are working on it. You are working on it anyway. Okay? So work on something you will enjoy. It's better than working something, quote unquote, under duress. You see? That is ala madad in Arabic, as we say, under duress. Okay? Good. Mr. Samir, I think, how to choose a researchable topic that has enough resources? It's to check, maybe to Google the keywords there and see whether there are enough references, or you can ask, Google or other research or search engines, maybe about, whether this topic is, or literature review on, and then you have the keywords, and you will check whether it's researchable, and whether it's there are enough references on it. Good. Mustafa Murshid, one way of synthesizing research is to use group citations. Like, look at this very lucid, very perspicuous suggestion by Mr. Mustafa. Yes, look at this. Mustafa Murshid is saying, one way of synthesizing research is to use the group citations like according to a number of scholars, and then example, of course, etc. You can once you mention a concept, then you open a bracket and you start from the oldest, of course. You mention all the people talked about that. But you can that's for synthesizing. And you may, after that, Mr. Mustafa, and of course the rest, and these things, you might come and, establish a comparison to show that you are also involved there. Sarah Al-Allali, hello, I hope you're doing well. So happy that you have joined us. Thank you very much. I wish you all the best with your doctorate, because you are about to finish, inshallah. Ustad Darim Siraji, in your opinion, would you give your students 16 as the highest mark, writing an excellent research project? Some colleagues refuse to give even 13 on writing excellent research. Yeah, this is an issue that continues to drive a wedge among scholars, among professors. Look, don't look at it as an instantiation of a mean attitude, but this is what should be done generally. Look, when you have a research paper or anything, any task like a composition final exam or going beyond 16, I'm sorry, that diminishes the value of academia. I'm sorry, you give 19, there are people who gave 18 to students, for example, on a piece of research. 18, for a piece of research to get 18, it needs to have all the perfections of an outstanding piece of research. But when you see, I'm not saying that we don't have students who are as brilliant and as deserving, but when you see that this 18 repeats, I'm really sorry to say that that's an inflated grade. Okay, it's an inflated grade, and an inflated grade does not serve the student. Believe me, because when you give 18 to a student, what will the student say is that, well, I don't need to make any further effort. I should relax because I had 18, which means that I am so and so. Catastrophically, to my dismay, I read papers that got an astronomical score with very, flagrant mistakes of design, of writing, of presentation. You will not give that even a 30. That's something that that is not good. So it's the idea of so we have to encourage students. We have to work with our students. That's for sure. We have to, but again, when you check with the professor will tell you, for example, I've never done this, but the professor may have his or her own argument why this student, for example, the student has been working continuously, has attended all the sessions, he has submitted all. That's fine. But this is personal. Even under these circumstances, I would never go beyond 16. So it's good to encourage. We encourage students not by inflating their grades. We encourage students by giving them what they really deserve, plus maybe 2 points. That's fine. But to keep on inflating, giving astronomical scores, that does not encourage the student to further, provide, invest in his or her work, and that's, by the way, that's injustice done to the students who work hard and get a 30. Okay, good. So that's my opinion, Professor Serraji. Okay, see Mohammed Al-Zraq. Hello, Professor. But by the way, Professor Serraji, just imagine there is a grammar, for example, test, and the student has no single mistake. Here, yes, 20 can go. But I'm talking about courses that are composition courses, research, where you have to produce essays, and it's more likely for a student to make a mistake here or there. It's quite normal. Okay, style and grammar and organization, all of these things are taken into consideration, of course. All right. Mohammed Al-Zraq, our friend, hello. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're doing well too, Mr. Al-Zraq. What's the appropriate statistical test for correlating variable frequent technique measured through Likert scale grouped into 2 levels with teaching experience 4 levels? It all depends on how. Okay, Mr. Mohammed. First and foremost, I would like to say that this will depend on how many items you have for one variable, for each variable. What I would do here is that as long as I can convert those variables, as long as, of course, I have a number of items. I don't know whether this is the case for you, because you are talking about here variable frequent techniques measured through Likert scale. What do you mean by frequent techniques? Okay, is it a nominal scale variable, or is it and then grouped into two levels, and then you have through Likert scale grouped into two levels. So it's a grouping variable here with teaching experience 4 levels. Teaching experiences. So here this may not work with the Pearson product moment correlation. Here you can do something like chi-square or cross tabulations. I think that's, as long as you have nominal scale variables. Now, if you have a way of taking those items and converting them, making use of the compute variable and converting them into maybe scale variables, I mean ratio or interval scale, you can proceed with the with the Pearson product moment if you satisfy the requirement of normality, of course, and then life will be good. But as long as you have nominal scale data, and that's what I sense you have here. In that case, neither Pearson nor Spearman would do this job. Maybe you can look for other means, like as I said, chi-square or cross tabulations, where you can see these correspondences clearly. Okay, Silzrak, teaching 4 levels, of course. Yes. Ahmed Boussal, salam, dear professor. How are you doing? Hi, professor. Okay, thank you, Mr. Ahmed Boussal. I'm doing well. Thank you so much. Indeed. Si Abdurrahim, hello. I hope you're doing well, Si Abdurrahim. Say, I have 8 previous studies in the literature review section following supervisor instruction. And once I am in the findings section, I found out that there is another previous study that validates my findings. Evidently, it would be nice to cite this study in the findings. Look, see Abdurrahim. This is very important. I hope, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you... so there is something else you are saying here, but I'm afraid I might not be welcomed by the supervisor since I have been introduced to say, look, I doubt Mr. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, would you kindly come back to read Si Abdurrahim's point here, Abdurrahim Jarrai, because this is something that recurs among students, especially doctoral students, master students. Sometimes we review our literature, we have a methodology chapter, we collect data, we analyze it, and we come to the point where we analyze the data collected. Of course, here, suddenly, something emerges. A recent study has emerged. Si Abdurrahim, here I would like to advise you not only to include the new study in your analysis, but you have an opportunity to include it in the review of literature. It's an opportunity for you. You cannot skip it, because that will show when the reader comes, when you have an examiner, he or she will commend you on having been of being updated of the recent literature. You see, this is really nice. It's an opportunity. I really doubt whether your supervisor, I doubt that your supervisor will say no for this. One thing you can do is to get in touch with your supervisor. Hello, dear professor. I hope you're doing well. This is to let you know that I have, fortunately, or that I have come across a recent reference that deals with the issue, that corroborates my study. Okay, I request that you allow me to add it. I'm sure the professor will allow you to to include it. Okay, it will certainly enrich your findings section, but also your review of the literature. And this is something that I will tell you again, ladies and gentlemen. When you have a review of the literature, just imagine you have spent some time on the review of the literature, and you come to the point where you conclude and you say, well, I am done with this chapter. Does it mean that you will not revisit it? Does it mean that you will not come back to supplement it? Does it mean that if you have come across a reference that you might want to add, you will not add? Does it mean that you will not delete? Writing is cyclical. It's not linear. You've got to Visit what you did before every now and then, until the last day, perhaps of your work on the thesis. You can still come and visit anything that you said before. You see, so it's something. Do you think my fear is no, no, no? You contact your supervisor and you include that, and sometimes supervisors do this because you know that some students may not be honest in reviewing the literature. That's why some supervisors resort to this. You have to read this. Don't go outside of it, because if they say, well, just read anything that you will find, there are, I'm not saying this, it's out of good faith, I would say that our students do not cheat. But I'm sorry, you may laugh at this. But anyway, in order to, reduce the chances for dishonesty, the professor imposes on students those articles. But when I'm sure when you contact the student and talk about the article, and when you show that you know what it is about, and show that it is relevant, then I don't think that the supervisor will say anything about it. For sure. Okay, thank you. I think there is a friend by the name of Awatif. Thank you, Professor. She said, we should organize the body with chapters. Amina, would you kindly be clearer on this? We should organize the body with the chapters. Amina, would you kindly say it again? I'm sorry, but I don't know what you mean by the body with the chapters. I would love to hear or to read this sentence in other words, or at least elaborate on it. Unless it's a reaction to something I said before, because I cannot make it here. Nathalie Leblanc, does a good research methodology help ensure the reliability of validity? Yes, of course. Yes, of course. That's the raison d'être for the research methodology. We strain to show that our research is both valid and reliable by, thinking up a good research design, a good research methodology. That's for sure, Natalie. Yes, of course, and reliable also of the findings. Yes, because if you go the wrong way, let's say if you come and tell me, for example, that our friend so and so, is, for instance, is a genius. He's a genius, like that. And I found out that he was a genius. My natural question is, how did you find out? If your answer is, I found out that he was a genius because he attended an international conference, I can tell you, excuse me, Natalie, this is not a good way of arguing for your friend being a genius. So this example illustrates that the how is very important. You understand? But if you tell me he is a genius because he has solved all the mathematical and in algebra, in geometry, whatever, and all the questions, the puzzles, he is always the first to solve any complicated puzzle, I can tell you, oh, this is really nice. This is really nice. Yeah, this is more reliable. But when you tell me he attends international conferences, that's not a genius at all. There is no guarantee that he may be a genius, but the way you discover it is simply wrong. So methodology is where we have to take precautions to ensure that our study is conducted under the best scientific circumstances possible. Okay, because if you go astray, I'm sorry to use the word, if you deviate at one of the points, it means that the results will not be reliable at all. Okay, so Natalie, yes, I confirm this, and this to a large extent, of course. Ahmed Boussel, thank you so much. Marhaba si Ahmed, I'm glad that you have, contributed to this discussion. Mhand, Can you provide some sources on applied linguistics? There are so many, of course. I can look for a number of books that I can even I think I have some downloaded stuff here. Would you kindly send me a private message so that I can see whether I can find something for you? There are many, of course, so many. You will have to choose. Some are not really, easy to read, but there are others who are manageable or, very reader friendly. So you can choose to send me a message. Amal Mu, thank you, Amal. Othman has deleted his message. Yusuf in Nawawi. Would you please highlight how we can do the proposal of the PFE subject? Thank you. The proposal, of course, this needs some assistance from your supervisor. I don't know what left. Since you're talking about PFE, you're talking about the license level, the S5, S6 level. Sorry for a sip. A proposal is just one way of making sure that you will not be lost. Let me repeat. This is very nice. Let me repeat it. Why the proposal? Do you think that the professors just want to torture you by asking you to write a proposal? No. The proposal, when you write a proposal is an opportunity for you to sit down and think up the roadmap, so to speak, that you need to follow in the course of your research. What would happen without a proposal? Without a proposal, number one, you will not know where you are going. Why? Because you may read 10, 20 articles and books, and you will still not know where you are going because you don't have objectives. So a proposal should have objectives. Okay, so you should tell, you should say what you will be investigating and why you will be investigating it, to make it credible, to give it a rationale, to give it some justification. And then you might look at what has been written about the topic. This is maybe a small review there, 2 paragraphs perhaps, where you summarize briefly the main studies that have been conducted on the issue. Okay, that's one thing you have to do. And more importantly, it's where you state the methodology, either by discussing the point with different people, or also by reading what was written before about your topic. So here you can think of a methodology. So you write it down there. That's it. In a proposal, this is what we need to include. Okay, how to write it? Of course, you have a topic that springs from you. You need to do some search there and see what people have written about it before, and you decide what aspects of this issue you will discuss. You will convert this into research objectives and therefore research hypotheses, and then you will do some review, as I said, and draft a methodology. It's a plan that you will go through. Okay, so proposal is very important, but please try to demystify it. It's not a monster. It's not something that will, decide your academic life. But it's a very important way of helping you stand on your feet as a beginning researcher. Okay, because it's like you have a map. It's like an application that you have to show you the road. Especially that in research, if you have one topic, there are multiple ways of handling it. Just one single topic, you see, can be handled by multiple or in multiple ways. So the proposal is one way of saying, well, this is my objective, this is my way. These ways, no, I will opt for this. And of course, it will help you also select the appropriate materials to read, the appropriate articles or studies to read. You see? So of course, because you cannot include in a study, an article that is irrelevant, even if it talks about the same thing, but the way you treat it is outside of what the other study is doing. So this is the relevance of the research proposal. It's very easy to handle, of course. Okay. Mohammed Zero says, just one question, please. Mr. Mohammed Zero, I say Muhammad. Why did you say Muhammad 0? Muhammad 1, Muhammad. Okay. Just don't call yourself 0 because unless you're doing this ironically. But anyway, you are free to choose this name. Of course, I'm not criticizing, just trying to break the ice with you, perhaps because this is the first time that you're joining me here. If we choose to do a research about Amazigh, maybe there is no, there are many. There are many resources, and I can help you with this if it's about the Amazigh phonology, morphology, perhaps also syntax and sociolinguistics. I can help. There is no problem. Send me a private message, and I can help with that. There are a lot of resources, and there is a lot you can do with it as a researcher. Nice. Flying Dutchman. Are you a Dutchman? Do you live in Holland or what, Mr. Flying Dutchman? If you live in Holland, then you have to say vliegen. Vliegen, the Dutch, what's that? Nederlander. All right. Nice. Most of the time, the supervisors are the ones who choose the topic for students. Well, in that case, generally, when a supervisor chooses, why do you think that the supervisor chooses for the students? Because probably some supervisors judge that their students are unable to handle the situation, and therefore they can guide them. Generally, when the supervisor chooses, subjects for you, it means that he can also help you with the references. If that happens, that's so much the better. Okay, that's so much the better. When I said before that it should spring from, because you cannot challenge your supervisor. You cannot say, well, it should spring from me. No, I'm not talking about this category of students. If the supervisor, we will not say impose, but suggests a topic for you, then take it, but seek advice from me, because he is one behind the choice of this topic, and I'm sure he will provide you with the resources available. Okay, Amina, can you give me some topics about language and culture? There are many, of course, but it cannot suggest. About language and culture, there are a lot, of topics that you can handle. Language and culture, you can talk about pragmatics, for example, any issue in pragmatics, in pragmalinguistics, in sociopragmatics. Language and culture, maybe semantics, is an area where you can have cultural. A very quick example is the fact that, for example, in Amazigh, for example, the difference between green and blue is neutralized in the name blue. For example, in Terfit, and of course in some other Amazigh varieties, when you have Aziza, when it is green, you call it Aziza, and when it's blue, you call it Aziza. But you don't have something that is. It's not like Arabic or Azraq and then Khadar. Yeah, this is worth investigating, of course, and I'm not talking about this very, very term, but if there are terms like that, that's one way of doing it. But certainly, there are other, issues that these are just examples that are very spontaneous. One thing you can do, Amina, is to Google for example, aspects of language and culture, and then you have a list, and you choose the one that you will love, that you will enjoy working with, and the one that you think can generate some data that you can work on. In that case, you can just go and do your investigation. Okay, Sarah Lalali, thank you. I hope I'm doing well, Sarah. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best. Mr. Youssef Nawawi says, getting references just from Google or internet, is that no, not really. Not really. So Google, maybe the internet can help you maybe understand the issue better, but relying on this, ladies and gentlemen, relying on references that are published on the net, number one, who says that they are reliable? By the way, this is different from accessing a database and downloading papers from existing journals. That's not a problem. But the problem is when you Google and you have, for example, from certain websites that are not reliable, sometimes the writer is someone who has limited knowledge and so forth. No, please. Do not take that as a basis. It's better to read 3 references than to read 10 references in the form of websites that are not reliable. Point final. Okay. So, see, Yusuf, it's not enough and it's not advisable. I'm really sorry. Why? Because you are a beginning researcher. I gather that you probably are at the level of S5 or S6. Then this will not encourage you to go further. Let me tell you. Sure. A researcher who spends some time, and this, by the way, happened, and it's deplorable to let you know that there were people who were asked about the main, I will not hide it, but it was in recruitment. Someone who has already had a doctorate, who has applied for a teaching position. When you ask him or her about the main authorities in the field of his own doctorate, he or she, is unable to remember. All that they say is, I don't remember. Well, Kivash, you spend 5 years perhaps on something, on working on this issue, and you don't remember the main authorities. No. You show that you are a good researcher when you remember the authors and their papers, the title of the paper, or at least the date. Like, say, Chomsky, 95, for example. You remember these things, How do you do that? It's by reading individual papers rather than by getting the information from the internet. That's not reliable at all. See, Nawawi. And therefore, it's good to seek, probably look for ways or seek advice on how to probably download articles, or maybe go to libraries and consult books or articles. These are more reliable and they will give an impression, that you are a very good scholar. This does not have to do with the number of articles that you have read. So if you show that you have read 10 is good. It depends on the level. But let's say 5 articles. You know the author, you know the content there. You can talk about them with confidence. It's better than providing them with 50 references or 60 references from the internet. References that, of course, are everything but reliable. Okay, so Mustafa, Mr. Nawawi, you can use Google Scholar to look for sources. Unfortunately, Mr. Mustafa, even Google Scholar, sometimes it's you download articles where you find different types of mistakes, of problems. Of anyone who publishes anything, can include that in a Google Scholar, and that's one of the disadvantages of but there are databases, like if you have a subscription, for example, to Science Direct, or what's that, Elsevier, and you have all WordCat. I forgot the other one, the one that is famous. All right. Anyway, so you really need to be careful. It's because when you start as a researcher who relies only on the internet, there is this fear that you will continue like that, and it's not a good thing, of course. Okay, Ruqya Uhdi or Uhdi. I'm sorry, the H there is obscure for me, Arabic. So another question. It is not about PFE. My English in writing is very good. Okay, but when it comes to speaking, I just mumble and ideas do not come out of my mind. I want to fix that. Any advice, Professor? Ruqya or Ruqya. Okay, I'm sorry for the name. I cannot excuse this. Just overlook it. Okay. So Miss Ohadi, the only way to solve this problem is, I think this has to do with stage fright, with panicking. You'll probably panic. Of course, this is quite normal, because all too often I know someone, a friend, who had this problem. A very good writer, a very good researcher, but when you ask the person a question, the person starts trembling and mumbling and stuttering and stammering, but that's not this is solvable. Fortunately, there is a solution to this. The solution has to do with rehearsing at home. Don't leave things until you are in front of the audience and you start talking. Of course, you will mumble, you will falter, you will, have all sorts of problems in talking. So number one, try to rehearse. What is rehearse? At home, whether you are with someone, family member, a friend, of course, who will listen to you, or just alone, look at this. Try to record yourself here. Try to choose a point. Raqiya Uhaddi. You follow this and please promise that you will let us know about the result. Use the mobile. Think about a point. Maybe imagine that you have a presentation. You have your PowerPoint in front of you. Just take the first slide, not all of them. First slide. Try to express yourself, on that slide. To explain, to say, hello, I hope you're doing well. This is the this is the outline of my presentation. Maybe 2 minutes, record yourself, stop, and then listen to yourself. Listen to yourself. Certainly, you will say, oh, well, how come that I have this mistake, And then try again, and then try again, and do it for the second slide, do it for the third, for the fourth perhaps, and make sure you will have good results. That's one thing. The other thing is, sometimes you need to choose your circle, your friends, and try to talk in front of them, the people who you think will not embarrass you. You see, your intimate friends, of course, and try to present something in front of them. They will encourage you. They will say, well, this is good, this is bad. And then when you move to the stage where you have a larger audience, I'm sure you will have acquired the habit of talking in front of the audience without any problem. Please try this and let me know. Okay? Thank you, Professor Siraji. She is thanking me for a response. You are more than welcome. We have other questions here to answer. It shows that there are people who are interested in these things. So I probably need to move quickly. Siraji, thank you. Yes. Learning English, Professor. We can use literary point of view of philosophers and authors. That's true. Yes, if they are relevant, to your topic, just go for it. Anyone, whoever he or she is, who is an authority in the field, no matter what discipline he comes from or he belongs to, yes, he's worth including. Even citations and make reference to his or her work, and then you can go. There's no problem with that, of course. Hassan Aitamu, good evening, Professor. Nice to see you back. Thank you, Si Hassan. I'm very happy you have joined us. Thank you. Yusuf Nawawi, Mr. Murshid, how can I know that the subject has available sources? So please, Mr. Murshid, and I think I made a point in response to one of the friends here. But Si Mustafa, if you could possibly get in touch with Mr. Nawawi, and because he is addressing this request to you, and I'm sure you are in a very good position to do that, given what I know about you. Ustada Zinab has deleted a message. Okay, I hope she's taking it up later. Mr. Uthman Bukhzar, hello, dear professor. In the case of a mixed method research addressing 4 research questions, is it advisable to include a statistical hypothesis, null, and alternative? Yes. Nice. Okay, now let me clarify something, please, concerning the use of the null hypothesis. Why null hypothesis? Null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is, of course, the logical opposite of the research hypothesis. For example, if you say group 1 will outperform group 2, this is a hypothesis. The null hypothesis is will not outperform. Okay? Or there is a strong connection between variable 1 and variable 2. The null hypothesis, there is no connection. So it's the logical alternative, right? Good. And they can be directional and non-directional. We leave this aside. Now, we to include statistical hypothesis? Yes. شوف, conducting a statistical analysis necessarily presupposes that you are a strong believer in the null hypothesis. So after all, in statistics, what we actually do is not confirm the hypothesis. No, it's reject the null hypothesis. In other words, in our quantitative research, we confirm our hypothesis in an indirect way. كيفاش in an indirect way? It's by rejecting the null hypothesis. If you find, for example, that between group 1 and group 2, there is a significant difference, let's say 0.003. So it's significant. So what we do here is reject the null hypothesis that two groups are similar. And therefore, our hypothesis says, the initial hypothesis in the introduction says there will be a difference. Student 1 or group 1 will outperform group 2. Okay? So we confirm our hypothesis by means of rejecting the null hypothesis. What does this tell us? This tells us that statistically, what we actually measure is not the hypothesis, but the null hypothesis. It's H0. I hope Mr. Uthman so the answer is yes, as long as you are conducting a quantitative study of whatever nature it is, as long as you have data there that is numeric, so you are actually doing that by invoking the null hypothesis. You are testing the null hypothesis. You are trying to reject the null hypothesis. After all, a statistical analysis is an attempt to reject the null hypothesis and by implication, retaining the research hypothesis. Okay? Hello, Ustada Iman Brigi, the hardworking lady. Hello, I hope you're doing well. Thank you very much for joining us, and it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much. Ustada Zainab, ahlan wa sahlan. I hope you're doing well as well as my friend, okay, and his brother and the little angel. Thank you very much, Ustada Zainab. You are welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much. Si Abdurrahim, thank you so much for answering my question. Barakallahu feek. You are more than welcome, my friend. Maryam Snaji is answering perhaps Arqiya. This is exactly my dilemma. I have a very high effective filter. So speaking in front of people, Maryam and Arqiya, could you possibly try the method I gave you and promise that you will come back to me? Okay, I'm sure it's going to work. I'm sure it's going to work. Because I tried it myself in other languages, of course, and I even did this at the beginning. You can't imagine how shy I was when I was a first year and second year student. فاش كانت القرايه بالعام, it's with the semesters. Okay, now you can't imagine. I still remember the first time I stood in front of the audience. So it was I was blushing and unable to produce. I had what to say, and I could construct good sentences, but to get them out was difficult. I was feeling butterflies in the stomach and maybe something here, and the blood circulation was high and so forth. But it takes some time, of course, to work this out, and this happens also to the friend here who defends the doctorate and happen to secure a position as a professor at the faculty. When they get for the first time, especially if they have not taught at the level of high school, they get into the amphitheater or to the classroom and they see that number of students, and it's really hard. I mean, but this is not a problem that is permanent. Fortunately, this is psychological. This can be solved without any problem whatsoever. Okay. Fatima is thanking me. Thank you so much. Ustada Zainab, Professor, how can we ensure the reliability or validity of our research findings? Thank you very much. So for the reliability can be achieved by a number of measures, of course, one of which is maybe to conduct the famous test, the Cronbach alpha. Of course, it's the reliability of the instruments, because the reliability of the results will depend on the reliability of what came before, especially the instruments, the methods, the participants, the size, the sample. You see, just imagine I'm working on the performance of students, and I end up just, for example, maybe getting data from the classes where the students are very hardworking. Just imagine I do that intentionally. This will certainly affect the reliability of my work, of my of my results. Okay, so you can do that by triangulating your instruments. Triangulating means what? Means that you have an issue, and you use for example, a questionnaire to collect your data, but you might want to use another instrument for data collection, maybe the interview, or for the same thing you have two instruments or three. Now, another example is when you, for example, when you want to collect data about the performance on a syntactic phenomenon. You can use grammaticality judgment task, you can use translation task, you can use the free production task. All these are ways of what? Of promoting reliability, of ensuring reliability of your work. All right. So the reliability of the findings heavily depend on the reliability of the instruments, of the reliability of everything before. Okay. Now, for the validity is somehow different. What is validity? Validity is whether our research or our piece of research investigates what it says it needs to investigate. Or in simpler terms, is whether it investigates what it intends to investigate. You cannot, for example, say that you will analyze just to make it clear. You will analyze, for instance, you will analyze gender differences, okay, on the production of sounds in English. Okay, sounds in English is so broad. Just imagine, as a researcher, I have something like this: gender differences, the production of sounds, the sounds of English. And when I open the thesis, I find out that the person is just talking about vowel reduction, the production of a schwa vowel. Is this valid? No, my friend, it's not valid. Why? Because the title and the objectives and all the thing, have given me the hope to see how pronunciation varies as we move from male to female. Only to find out that the person in question, the researcher, is talking just about, okay, the schwa vowel. You see? So this is not reliable. Because why? Because the study here does not investigate what it purports to investigate. Okay? Or when you have, for example, the issue of attitudes, investigating learners' attitudes, etc. Well, and then when it comes to your instrument, you have one question. Do you like this? Do you like this? This is not a way of measuring attitude. You see? So bottom line, reliability and validity of the findings will are, of course, the offshoot of what was done before. So what is the moral here? What's the lesson? The lesson is that from day one, we should know where we step. We have to watch our steps in the research process. You see? So we have to be careful, because lack of validity, as Professor Zainab says, and lack of reliability will certainly bias the results, and therefore we can easily be criticized for being subjective or being of going the wrong way, and therefore invalidating our findings. Okay, thank you, Professor Zainab, for this interesting question. Gulmima teaching, hello, Professor. How to ensure that our instruments we use to collect data will be consistent and reliable when analyzed using SPSS, so that we could repeat the whole collection of data. Nice. This is nice. I think there is a lot in common between Gulmima teaching and Zainab when it comes to this question. For the consistency of the items of a questionnaire, for example, we measure them by using the alpha index, or what is referred to as the Cronbach alpha on SPSS. That's one way of, that's one necessary step to go, because if you have items 1 to 5, first we need to make sure that items 1 to 5 measure this variable. Who decides that? Yeah, we can do that from our hunch, We have a feeling that this question, this question, this question, this question measure this variable. But we have to have a scientific piece of evidence to show, well, to make sure that there is reliability, that the 5 items do all contribute to that variable that we are investigating. And therefore, what we do to make sure that this is the case, what we need to do is to go to the analysis, reliability, and then you have skills, and then you probably need to enter the variables. There is a procedure for that anyway. So that's one way of doing it. The second thing is good English is to pilot your instruments. What is piloting? Piloting means trying your instruments on a very limited number of respondents before you generalize it to maybe the 50 or the 60 or the 70 that you are targeting. So try it first on 3, and this will give you feedback, about the timing and about the number of items and number, whether the items are difficult or not, and whether the instructions are clear or not, and whether it's too long or too short. You see, so these, I think, just to summarize my answers, one way of doing it, one necessary way is to do the alpha, to look for the alpha index, which should be normally between, so from 70 onwards or upwards. If it's below, then there is a table that asks you to delete this item so that the reliability index will go up. And the second thing I've talked about is to pilot your study. Okay, nice. I think you have repeated the question. That's fine. It's fine. Okay. Budinar Absamad, Professor, thank you very much. Indeed, this is very helpful. Thank you so much, C. Absamad. I'm very happy that you like it. Okay, Budinar. Mohammed Zarq, the relationship between the supervisee and the supervisor should be framed within the ethics and principles of good character and conduct with deeply absorbing this no pain. Yes, that's true. That's true. That's true, especially, when it comes to, I can't understand why some students get absent from the supervisor for months. And later on, when they come back, they blame it on the supervisor. This is not good, of course. So please be consistent in sending messages to your supervisor, informing him or her of what you do, etc. Okay? Yeah, of course, that's the relationship that they have. Both parties have rights and they have obligations. That's what sums it up all. Asma Narjis, hello. Thank you for the clapping of the hands. That's a round of applause that Asma is giving me. Thank you so much. Okay. Hanin has deleted the message. Ibtisam Silo. Hello, Professor. I hope you're doing well. Could you please record this live stream? Yes, it's all my live streams, Ibtisam, are recorded. So when you go to the channel, just look for the live rubric and you will find all, the recordings with all the digressions inside, but I leave them as they are. Never mind. By the way, I don't know whether you have subscribed, you have not, you have shared the link. I have not made this call because I know that you will do this automatically. So please share and subscribe if you have not. You can also choose to subscribe to the Facebook page because I will soon be, I don't know if I can tell you now because I have a plan probably to leave, to have this division of labor, repartition of topics. Maybe I can leave one for research and the other for advanced English because I no longer post, things that relate to English expressions and rules. They are, of course, needed. Anyway, this certainly will be encouraging when I find that more people get subscribed to these two platforms. All right, thank you. Schnocher, I just don't know. I had something to tell you in mind, but anyway, never mind. Okay, yeah, it's there. It's recorded. Khalid, barely do we see professors helping students like you. Thank you so much. Thank you also for seeing this, for using barely in a nice way, because you have used inversion. Look at this. Barely do we see. Huh? It's not barely we see, because barely is a near negative, and therefore it needs it needs inversion. Thank you, Khalid. This is really interesting. Yusuf Nawawi says Bastas has retracted the message. Yusuf Nawawi, I'm thinking about symbolism in literature as a topic, and I'm not sure if I should not be specific that way in terms of doing research on literature. I will not talk to you about the topic, the content, because I'm certainly not cut out for that. There are certainly people who can do that in a far better way because they are specialists. So please talk to your supervisor. Symbolism in literature, to me, maybe wrong. You symbolism, yes, in literature, I think it's broad. So what you can do is maybe focus on a specific author or a specific literary movement or whatever. And then you will have, you see, for example, in transcendentalism, where you have a lot of symbolism, okay, Henry David Thoreau and the other one, I don't know what's his name, Nathaniel Hawthorne, okay, Nathaniel Hawthorne, okay, so you can, these are the equivalents of romanticism, idealism in continental in Europe. But that's the talk of a non-specialist. So you can talk either about a given literary movement or a given novel, given set of novels. Okay, that will be good. I wish you all the best, Yusuf, and I'm very happy that we have someone interested in literature, because over the last few years we have more people interested in linguistics or in so-called. I'm saying so-called because sometimes okay, let me say that directly. There are many people who claim that they are specialists in applied linguistics, and when you ask them about an individual concept in linguistics, they say, "Well, I'm doing applied linguistics." Well, where is the linguistics part? That's the point. So anyway, so it's good that we have someone here interested in literature. That's nice. Does experimental research necessarily establish causality? If it's done the right way, of course, yes, Natalie. But the point is that there is always room for some doubt, that 5%. Doing statistics is not marked by precision. This is unlike mathematics. But yes, of course, it implies causality. It implies the impact, of course, because when you have an experimental group and a control group, and your experiment is well controlled, of course, whatever result you have after is due to what you believe to be an independent variable. All right. Gulmima teaching. Can we email you, sir, or some tips or directions? Please do that. You can use my Facebook page, Your Academic Companion, Dr. Amrous. Send me a message there. If I don't respond, then it means that I'm just busy with something. I will get back to you, of course. So please, send a message there without any problem. Nathalie Leblanc says, to overcome stress, it's also good to breathe deeply and to focus on the topic instead of the audience. Practice makes perfect. I think you are saying, what I said in a better, perhaps, and more straightforward way. Nathalie, thank you so much. I fully agree with you. Miriam Snhaji says, if one of the jury members asks about the choice of the topic, how should we answer this question, knowing that the research topic was chosen by the supervisor? That's nice. Look, Miriam Snhaji, if this happens, sorry, this will find an answer, because look, just imagine your supervisor suggests a topic. When the supervisor suggests a topic, what you will do is try to find a rationale for the relevance of your topic. A rationale is a section that comes at the level of the introduction, where you see the reasons why you have chosen the topic, or the topic is worth investigating. It can be due to the lack of studies in the Moroccan context. It can be due to the fact that, people have addressed this, but they have not addressed this specific aspect of research. It could be that you have had some interest. I don't know. It could be that, of course, if it's in applied linguistics, you can refer to problems and difficulties that some students find. You can refer to the reform that is ongoing, and so on and so forth. So if you are asked about the choice of topic, you can just draw your answer from the rational section that you have written. That's all. Okay? You don't need to go into these details of because the supervisor told me. Never say this, please. Never say that the supervisor has imposed on me this. You see? All right. Good. Professor Zineb says, thank you, Professor, for your thoughts and insightful explanation. I really appreciate your time and effort. Thank you so much, Ustad Zineb. Barakallahu feek. And thank you for joining us despite your busy schedule. I need to repeat my gratitude to the fact that these meetings that we have bring together not only students but also professors. I'm really happy to have this this amalgam of students and professors and doctoral students as well. It's really nice. It's a very good community, in fact. Snaji says these types of questions are horrifying, especially when it comes to something related to the instructions of the supervisor. No. To each situation, there is a way of coping with it. So there is no worry, Mrs. Snaji. I hope everything will come out all right. So what's the moral? The moral is that if you work on your work seriously, if you work on your work, I'm sorry, that's tautology, but if you work on your thesis, on your study, the way people should work on their studies, you don't have to fear anything, because you make sure you will answer every single question a professor, a jury member can ask you. There is no shred of doubt that you will answer in a very smooth way, in a very clear way, in a very articulate way. Okay, nice. Okay, I don't think there is a problem here, because you will have finished your work and you will have known every single, point in it. All right. Saeed Rafi has retracted the message. Sibu Dinar Abd Samad, Professor, how can we identify a research gap? Any practical pieces of advice? Now, the research gap means what? It means that you are embarking on a topic that that people before you have embarked on, or had embarked on, but you don't want to do exactly the same thing. So you want to contribute to, you want your own contribution. After all, when we conduct our research, we need, the question that is asked is, what is your contribution? So what you can do is to identify the research gap. How do we identify the research gap? By, for example, consulting the references that you have, and maybe concluding that this issue was treated, for example, using gender variable, using social class, but parents' education has not been investigated. That's a research gap. I'm giving you this as an example. That's a research gap. So you can conduct research on the role of parents' background education, and maybe other, other variables. One technique to do that, since somebody you asked about it, is because usually, and of course, I'm sure your supervisor will instruct you to do that. Usually, when we are done, at the very end, when we reach the stage where we report on our findings, and we discuss them, and then there is a conclusion, and in the conclusion we summarize, of course, but we also have a section called limitations of the study. Limitations of the study. The limitations of the study section is a very good opportunity for you to draw your research gap. Okay. For example, I have a piece of work that I publish, and I say, okay, one of the limitations of this study is that it has not studied, for example, this acquisition process among children. Among children is a gap here. Why? Because it's mentioned in my thesis, in my conclusion, very clearly. This is just a spontaneous example, because in the limitations section, people talk about the things that they should have addressed, but they did not have time to address. You see? So that's one way of doing it. Just go and look at the conclusions of people's work, and there you will certainly find a research gap. Okay. Saeed Rafi, when will the thesis you previously showed us take place in Kinitra? Unfortunately, Mr. Saeed, okay, Professor Anas is in bereavement now. This is an occasion to reiterate our of course sincere condolences to her. So we will wait until further notice, but it should be taking place as soon as possible. All right. So it was scheduled on the 8th, and but it's unlikely to take place on the 8th. I will let you know in a live session anyway. Miriam Snaji says, I can't thank you enough for your time, sir. We appreciate your efforts. Thank you very much. It's really appreciable. I don't know why the people who asked me to talk about research methodology have not shown up to ask questions about things that they not, because I said it's not going to take the form of a lecture, because that might be misleading. علاش misleading? Because different people, different professors deal with research, or cover different aspects of research. We cannot cover everything, you see. So it would have been ideal, to have questions that come from students who are following this live session. Anyway, just in case there is need for this for discussion of I think we have talked about some of the aspects that touch on research methodology, but it would be better for those students who are expecting a makeup exam on research methodology to ask questions here, and so that I can elaborate on them. All right, I wish I had this opportunity when I was a student, to tell you the truth. All right, nice. So I was also requested to talk about, because there is a group of students at one of the universities who have introduction to linguistics as a subject, and I may hold a live session if I get any message from here until tomorrow. For example, in the private, I will just come and talk and answer their questions without any problem whatsoever. Okay, nice. Okay, dear friends, are there questions? Are there things, not necessarily questions, maybe ideas to discuss before we call it an evening or a night now? Okay, so I will make an announcement for another session as soon as possible. Depending, so if I don't receive a message in private, I mean on the Facebook page, your academic companion requesting a topic, then I can by default come to talk about a topic of my own choice, so that we can maybe share ideas and exchange maybe ideas and maybe socialize, of course, because we are getting accustomed to these things. All right, nice. See, Abdul Hafid Sharati, I appreciate your efforts, Professor. I would consult you for some references on Amazigh language. Marhaba, see Abdul Hafid. You are welcome. All that you need to do perhaps is to just drop a message in the inbox of my Facebook page, your academic companion, Dr. Amrous, and I will, try to help. I assume that I am aware of some references and consult some, and I have my own publications which I can share with you. This will depend on the topic that you are working on. See, Mohammed Bouknifi, you are still here. Thank you for making it to this point. Thank you for staying with us, Mr. Bouknifi. Mr. Bouknifi will defend his thesis very soon. I wish him all the best. So he should be the one to invite you to the work, to his defense. Thank you so much, C. Mohammed Bouknifi. Karim Boulain, any tips to come up with a table of contents, headings for literature review section? Thank you. So this is a little bit broad, Mr. Karim. But a review of literature, working on a review of literature needs enough time, of course, because it's very difficult. Let's not hide the fact. Let's not blink the fact. But much of the endeavor needs to be, sometimes you need to go to a cafe or to a space or just at home, lock yourself up for some time, and you may spend 2, 3, 4 hours, 2, 3, 4 sessions just on the planning of the review of literature. Where will you get this planning? From the articles that you read, from the studies that you read. Of course, you need to say, well, this is my topic. What key point here? What are the ideas that can flank this? What are the ideas that are related to the central point? هادوك هما themes ديالك. Okay? Let me say, I think giving an example is a good thing. Let's go back to the example I gave you on, maybe I think it was the acquisition of diphthongs among Moroccan EFL learners. Just imagine that this is my topic. How can I plan a review of literature? A review in the broad sense, feel conceptual, feel theoretical framework, and so on and so forth. So the first point is to define the term. What is a diphthong? What is a diphthong? What is a diphthong? Why is it called a diphthong? Characteristics of diphthongs. Diphthongs in different languages. They are logical, of course. And then section 2, the treatment of diphthongs from different angles of different theoretical perspectives. And then you have structuralism, you have so-called functionalism, generativism, and in generativism you have A, B, C, D, the standard theory, the nonlinear framework, feature geometry, optimality theory, and so forth. And then you move to the next big point, okay, about second language acquisition or second language phonology. Point 1, the notion of a second language. Point 2, I'm just spontaneous here, but this is one way of doing it. Previous studies on the acquisition of L2 phonology and phonology in optimality theory, for example, and then you have a review. That's one way of doing it. But just to the thrust of what I'm saying is that you have a central point, the point of your work, and you have issues that will feed that point, that are related to that point. These points will constitute a review of literature. And of course, there needs to be a logical connection between them. If you manage to do this, then you have a very good, of course, review of literature. But please don't just read and write. You need this plan. The table of contents, you are very smart in asking this question. The table of contents will help you a lot, but it's difficult to construct because it requires time. You need sessions. Sometimes you need sessions just for the planning. And you might want to, before writing anything, just discuss the planning with the people around you, a supervisor, another professor, Okay, that's how things need to be done. Mr. Karim Boulain, Mariam Sanhaji, one last request. Would you honor us with a video on how to use IFRS? Yes. Yeah, sure, inshallah. Inshallah, more sessions will come on this. More sessions, inshallah. Thank you. Okay. Finally, before I leave, I strongly ask you to like this video, try to comment on it, try to share. And those of you who have not subscribed, just subscribe, because that's not going to take from your money. It's not going to take from your effort. And it's not going to take from the person you are. So just go ahead and do it. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ustad Zineb. Thank you, Si Mustafa Murshid, Natalie, and everyone there. We call it an evening, and until further notice, I wish you a very good night, everyone. Thank you so much. Okay, end stream.